Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a review of Gene Wolfe's The Citadel of the Autarch, the completion of the Book of the New Sun, the fourth part in this series. We're going to review that book and then overall answer the question, now that we finished all four books, is Book of the New Sun good? I think we could all agree it's probably good. But is it great? Does it ascend to that next level? Now, I know what you're going to say. I have yet to read Gene Wolfe's The Earth of the New Sun. Been described as the coda to the series. So we're just talking about the Book of the New Sun, what Severian writes, his journey from gate to gate, as he says, and really explore it. It's been quite a journey reading this series. Obviously, in the last 2 months, I've been enraptured with it. I started at the beginning of June and burned through these first four books, and I do plan on reading Earth of the New Sun. It's been a journey. It's been confusing. It's been weird. It's been unique for sure. And I do feel like, going straight into this review, Citadel as a fourth book does make me feel a lot better about the series. One of the problems with super complicated books, or confusing books rather, is you're really worried that you're never going to get it without the assistance of lecture videos or reading other books about the book to understand it. That was something I had with Malazan, where I didn't know if I was ever going to get it, but then the conclusion of that series really makes you feel like, oh, it was a worthwhile journey. Same thing with Book of the New Sun. I think the books got less confusing as I stayed in this world a little bit longer. A lot of the more of the mystery started to be unveiled, and you just got more familiar with Gene's writing style in this series. And the fourth book does answer a lot of questions, still poses a lot of questions, but overall, it did feel like a conclusion that I could really sink my teeth into. Most importantly, it made it clear what Severian's arc was in this story. All these trials and tribulations he went through, all the weird side quests, were all in this purpose of him being ready to take the Autarch role in this world. And I feel like it pays off. It makes me appreciate it more in retrospect. And I'll talk a little bit about that more and later. But obviously that's a huge reveal, is that he was destined to be this leader of this continent, of this people, and it makes a lot of sense. I could already smell, I don't know if smell's the right word. I could already remember the foreshadowing when I read it the first time. It just makes a lot of sense, is what I was trying to say. There's still a lot of mystery and confusion, like I said, but I feel like the way this book plays out, it's all mysteries that I can sit with, I guess is a way to describe it. Not that I don't want to know the answers, because I absolutely do, but it felt less like I'm confused and I don't know if it's because I'm stupid or not, versus I'm confused and like this is something that I'm supposed to be confused about. Because one of the great things about this book that I really, really enjoyed, and I don't know if I talked about this a lot in my other reviews of the books, but the framing of this series, with it being Severian telling this story from the future and writing down this journey. I liked his little interjections throughout it, but as a framing device, in this book specifically, he literally says at the end, he said, I wrote this down, my entire story, what you just read, and I'm going to write it down again. So you need to read it again too. If you're still confused, and I told you you'd have all the answers right now, but you don't, it's because you have to read it again, just like I'm writing it again. What a perfect way for the author to tell you to reread this series. I know you guys have been telling me that, but it's really rare, and I thought it was quite unique that Gene, as Severian, tells the reader, if you're still confused, it's all there. You just have to reread it. And jumping ahead of myself a little bit there, it makes me almost more hesitant to read Earth of the New Sun, because I know vaguely what it's about. It's about this journey that Severian has to go on to meet with the mystical sci-fi people and ask if he can rebirth the sun or something like that. I'm foggy on the details, okay? But this really did feel like the end of this journey. It felt like the end of the Book of the New Sun that he was writing, because it was. So I'm almost not inclined to jump straight into this coda of the series without first rereading it, because I feel like I want to follow his directions, but I'm also not going to reread these books right away. But I feel like I kind of want to, but is that the death of me if I just reread the four books again? I don't know. You guys will have to let me know, because I know you guys recommend I do read this book, and it does clear up a lot of mysteries, a lot of the really confusing stuff. He kind of lays it out flat for you. But I also noticed from my peeking at the internet that some people say oh, all the information you need to know is in the main four books. and he kind of wrote the fifth book as like a guide for the idiots. But then some people are like, no, that's just not correct. He just needed to expand upon the story, and it's an expansion, so you have to read it. But I feel conflicted because as the author as the main character told me to reread these books, and I feel like I do want to reread them. I don't know. Should I wait on it? Should I dive into it? I don't know. I'm hesitating on it. I really am. I was prepared to just dive straight into it, but I'm hesitating just the way that book ends. I don't know. There's a lot of mysteries, though. And I think that the author telling me to reread it, a lot of those mysteries will become clear, but I already know there's some things that it's just confusing because it's a lot going on, right? Like the alien people, which ones, like, what do they mean? What do they do? All the creatures coming out of the woodwork. What's a spaceship? What's a regular boat? I don't really know. It's all over the place. But to that point, this book leans way more heavily into the sci-fi elements, which in a way makes the series better because you realize how much of this fantasy magic stuff was sci-fi. It still feels very mystical sci-fi magic fantasy to me. But with like the spaceships and the technology and just like the future and even like the sci-fi aspects of the idea of like branching timelines and a little bit of time travel action going on in this book. One of my favorite scenes was Severian meeting the man on the hill who lives in the house that's like time travel. The higher you go up, the further forward in time. And it's like, it showed us a timeline of Earth where it gets covered in ice. That was a very interesting, thought-provoking part of the story where like Severian is basically presented with a future of Earth that he can prevent. Not only that this house travels through time, that's pretty cool, but I thought it was an interesting turn that it was like, well, this is a possible future. And if I leave this house like you want me to, I might disappear because I'm maybe not supposed to be here. It might not be my future that we're leading to, which kind of presents this or takes away like the not preordained, but like it gives Severian more freedom, right? Because if it's like, I see the future, we're going to be covered in ice in a billion years, it's kind of like, okay, then what's the point of this whole new sun stuff? It's a possibility. So it gives Severian this agency to be able to want to change it. And at the end of the book, they present the idea of there are branching Severians who go on this journey. Some guided by the claw, some not guided by the claw. The one not by the claw fails. Is our Severian going to succeed? And it's still vague and confusing. I don't know if I fully understand it, but just the idea of there was a lot of ways this could have went down. And are we on like the sacred timeline? You know what I mean? That's kind of what we're talking about there. And there's a lot of Dune-ness about this series. And maybe it's because I read both of those series within the last few months. But that was an aspect like the Golden Path in this timeline where Severian's guided by the claw, becomes the Autarch, and is going to present himself to these aliens and be like, hey, plead my case here. It's interesting. And they also explore, and I said this in the last book review, the more of like the having other personalities inside your head and their memories and stuff like that. Very Dune-esque. And that's really expanded here just with meeting of the Autarch, who's a great character, by the way. Love their interactions where he says, like, yeah, you're going to have to eat me, bro. And you're going to suck in all my memories and drink the memory juice, and you're going to have all their memories too. You're really going to ascend into this leadership role. Loved it all. Even though it was very similar to Dune, I thought it was great. I thought it was unique in its own way. The conclusion of, like, Vodalus's arc and Aegea and her arc, I thought the parallels there with how Vodalus thought of the Autarch and how Aegea thinks of Severian, great parallels there. I thought that was fantastic. But yeah, all this sci-fi-ness, it puts a unique flavor on this whole series that I think is super unique. It's not quite fantasy, it's not quite sci-fi, it's somewhere in between, and it feels like it kind of feels like a legend told to people that are on a different world than us. Like it has a fable-esque quality, but with like terms and understandings that like it's just hard to grasp. And it's also like the framing, going back to the framing, it's not just that it's framed as Severian telling the story in a book, it's framed as Severian telling the story in a book that is found by Gene Wolfe and translated from a language that we do not speak. So it's as if he's finding this story, this fable, and translating it into our languages, and some of it just doesn't correlate because it's from a different language and a different... So what does that mean? Does that mean that we're in the future of this universe, or does it mean it's from a parallel timeline and where this exists in the future, but we got it in the present? The implications are out there, and somebody knows the answer. I'm just not there yet because I haven't reread this. I haven't reread it, and maybe the answers are in there, maybe they're not. But I thought it was fascinating, And I also think the conclusion, like the latter half, or the last act rather, of the story, once Severian sends this power, we know that this was his destiny. He kind of goes through greatest hits of like meeting a lot of the characters that he met throughout the series. Like he revisits Dorcas, he revisits the waiter who was revealed to be her son, and Severian is revealed. Did anybody else? So Dorcas is Severian's grandmother, apparently, because her son, who was the waiter, who's an old man now because she was dead for a couple decades, had a kid with a criminal who gave birth to Severian, and that's why he was in the torturers. But they boinked, did they not? His grandma, Dorcas? Someone should explore that. I think Severian's relationship with women in this series, he did mature a little bit. He wasn't just lusting after all of them, but he was kind of a little bit. He definitely settled down, though, from book 2 and book 3 to book 4. He did mature as a character. His arc was there. I thought he did grow into a leadership role, and I think this trial by fire, by putting him in this war and this cavalry, I thought that was a very interesting arc for him. I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the parts of the Maltese telling of stories. How does that play into the theme? I don't fully understand. Perhaps just the telling of stories and passing them along, because that's kind of the end. That note is like, you got to keep telling them. It's like, well, I wrote it down for you to read. Now you have the stories, so you got to keep them in your memory as well. That's kind of like along the lines of the Book of the New Sun and him telling us the story, telling us to read it and reread it. Never mind. I'm not confused at all. I actually know it. That's the answer. But I thought that was an interesting part of the story as well. And then there's like the part where at the very, very end, where the father Anir comes in, he's like giving him messages. I'm like, what is this, dude? So there's especially the very, very end, I was still confused. The conclusion of it, like the general wrap up of it, made a lot of sense to me. I thought thematically it felt brilliant. And it's begging for another reread. So again, please tell me if I should be reading Earth of the New Sun or I should reread the books for us, because my instinct is telling me I should not read this book. But I kind of want to see like his visit to the aliens, right? Because isn't that what that's all about? But I actually don't want to. So don't be surprised if I don't read it. Maybe not ever, but just if I don't. I just feel like I need to puzzle this one out, man. I need to pull out the notebook, pull out the pencil, start mapping this thing out. Because I still, even though I said I can't wait to finish the series and like start reading the wikis and reading the forums and all like that, I almost don't want to do that. I almost want to puzzle this out for myself and figure out the mysteries on my own and get my understanding from it. Am I crazy? I don't know. I think just that fact alone answers my question from the beginning of the video. Is this series great? I think it has to be considered great if it's making me think this hard about it. That's what's reading. That is what reading is all about. The fact that I could just sit here and puzzle, can I uncover the mysteries of this story? Like, how does an author do such a thing to me? It's quite ridiculous, in fact. And the fact that it ends with him meeting with the Torturers Guild and all the people he looked up to, he kind of revisits them in a new light. It's like his master is older than he remembered. His mentor, his peers that he looked up to are younger than he remembered because he's grown so much in this journey. And he has this idea of dismantling the Torturers Guild and kind of getting rid of this pillar of society. He doesn't see it in the future. Then also the debate between the two warring societies. First of all, I didn't catch that there was a war in the first 3 books. I know they say it's vague in the South, they don't really talk about it, but I feel like they definitely hinted at it. I just wasn't paying attention. So that war, I'm like, what's going on? Who are these continents? But the ideology of they know that they can't be going to the stars and warring with each other. They can't be making colonies of China and the United States on different planets and then shooting lasers at each other. We can't be doing that. We have to be together. And then one's philosophy is we need to make everybody the same. Everyone speaks the same words. And I thought that was very interesting. Versus Severian's country, where it's we need to have all the people in our hearts and in our brains and suck their memory juice out of their bones. Very interesting. But I need to sit with it. And I think that's what makes it great is I need to sit with this. I need to puzzle it out. And I want to is the most important thing. I want to figure it out. I want to uncover these mysteries. So I think it is great. It was a great recommendation that has took me on a wild journey. I'm so tempted to read these books again, guys. I don't think it's wise. For the health of the channel, not that really matters, guys. For the health of the channel, to be reading the same books over and over again in multiple months, it's a niche series, and I'll admit that. But is Book of the New Sun great? It is great, guys. It is great, I fear. In gosh darn if I don't want to read it again. But what if I don't understand it the second time? Then what do I do? Then I'm lost. But let me know what you guys think. Should I read Earth of the New Sun or not? My library hold ends on the 24th. So you have 3 days to decide, because I need to start it and finish it before then. There's your call to action. Please help me. I actually genuinely need help. Sometimes I ask and I don't actually need anything from you, even though I ask for it. I don't really care. This time I care. You need to let me know. Should I read Earth of the New Sun, or should I reread the main 4 books? If I reread, it may not happen right away, but it will happen eventually. Maybe when I'm older and wiser, perhaps. But be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video anyway. And if you want to see more like it in the future, if you like this series, let me know. If you've never heard of it before, I probably spoiled a lot of things for you. So what should I title this video? We'll figure it out. Thanks for sticking around.